Hello, my name is Katie Mary. I am a luxury destination wedding photographer and also photograph editorials for brands and shoot weddings around the world. I am a conservationist, really passionate about learning and entrepreneurial and personal growth, and really passionate about the earth and animals as well. I'm just happy to be here.
There's a ton of stuff I would love to talk with you about.
Great.
So we'll just go through stuff. Give us a little, couple minutes on just how you got started in photography.
Yeah, so my story goes all the way back to the small northern Nevada town that I went to high school in had a darkroom photography class that I was in, and I was lucky enough. This is way back when there were still dark rooms, and that's how they were teaching photography students, and so I got exposed. I'd always been into art, but really got exposed to photography through that, and my photography teacher really took me under her wing and asked me if I wanted to join this state competition called VICA, which was standard for Vocational Industrial Clubs of America. And it was everything from auto mechanics to welding to photography. I don't know if the program's still around, but it was really amazing actually in hindsight. And so I went to the state level competition and ended up winning there, which went on to a national competition and ended up runner up at the national competition. And ultimately scored three different photography school scholarships. So all of a sudden got kind of put on a path to go to photography school and ultimately became a photographer kind of based from winning those scholarships. So it kind of chose me versus the other way around.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you went to the Hallmark Institute of
I
Photography?
did.
Is
Yeah,
this
it's
right?
a
Okay.
small, really small photography school. I don't think it's there any longer
Mm-hmm.
in Western Massachusetts, and was a
Mm-hmm.
really intense, 8 hours a day of classes plus labs and things like that afterwards. So it was a real in-depth program and really immersive, which was amazing for me at the time.
Yeah.
Not your
You
traditional college experience.
right? Okay. I was curious if you recommend photographers going through a kind of a formal college or just some sort of formal photography education program like that. I
Yeah,
know a lot of
I
people are self-taught nowadays, but
Yeah, I do really well, and I think maybe, well, I don't know how other people learn, but I do really well with immersive experiences
mhm.
and really being all in committed to something. And so I'm a big fan of trade schools in general and just people being able to learn trades very in depth and really have a wealth of kind of general knowledge. I created back then, you had to choose a portfolio, whether that was people or commercial, and I chose general portfolio, so I was shooting still lifes, and I was shooting people, and I was doing commercial projects and all those types of things. And I think it, especially when you're starting out, that just the more that you can learn, even if it's outside the realm of what you think you're going to do, I think it just all adds to it and makes you stronger. So I would I'm but I'm you'll learn this from me. I'm an education junkie.
Yeah,
I would go to Harvard tomorrow if they take me. So
mhm.
to me, you can never
Yeah,
have too much education.
right. And then from there, you went to assisting after
Yes.
that. Is that your okay?
Yeah.
How tell me about that experience because I when I moved to Nashville, I assisted some commercial photographers for a while, so I have that experience. But it seems like fewer and fewer people I bump into have that background.
Yeah, and at the time it was like the only path really. I mean, you would never come out of school or just dive into the industry and, kind of be like, and now I'm a photographer. You always had
Yeah.
that assisting. People would kind of look at you like you were crazy if you just did that. So, uh, it really was the path forward, and I think once again so valuable to just be able to see other photographers who have been doing this for decades and see how they do things and how they run studios and how they light, and just learning the ins and outs of being on a crew day after day, and slogging equipment up and down beaches and in different countries. All of that was just so valuable. And this was also when weddings were still in church basements with white tablecloths, so that wasn't even like a blip on the radar
Yeah.
for me.
Right.
So I was really focused on going into fashion, and so just working for fashion photographers was obviously the best route forward.
Mm-hmm. Who is there any photographers you assisted that? I don't know if there's anybody I would know or anything, but just
Yeah,
curious.
probably the most notable, Patrick de Marchelier. I worked
Mm-hmm.
for him a few times, and always on big sets was like the fourth assistant or something like that. You know,
Yeah.
just holding umbrellas for him and running equipment up and down. So those types of I worked for a lot of different photographers out of New York, and then really ultimately a lot in Miami. Back then, the photography scene in Miami was really booming, and I
Mm.
ended up becoming a first for a German photographer down here, and traveled and worked with him full time for a few years. And that was really also when digital really came onto the scene, and he was very progressive. So I quickly became like the tech slash assistant, and really ultimately ended up digital teching then for crews following that. But I did a bit of everything from, production to assisting stylists to really, really a bit of everything, which I think gave me even more background to be able to do that a little bit now where I'm producing my own shoots. I kind of have a little bit of background of kind of how that goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's such an invaluable experience. I definitely, if I ever get run into somebody that has a chance to assist or they're in a city where that's like a thing, I definitely
Hmm.
recommend it because it will speed up the learning curve so much faster, and you'll
Yeah.
you'll learn what not to do. You kind of see how everything runs, how to work with people. It's like,
Hmm.
yeah, it's
The
gold.
hierarchy of shoots.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, for sure. Um, so getting into last year,
Oh, we're
how
gonna
did
talk about
that?
that.
What happened? Yeah, because that affected everybody. I've seen so many people affected by it. I mean, I've seen photographers that just quit, like they just
Right.
were like last year, it just did them in.
Hmm.
Um, so it seems like you're still here.
Still
So
here.
how'd you survive? Yeah.
Still standing. Goodness gracious. Well, you know, obviously it was a devastating year on so many levels, and so many people suffered in so many different ways. Uh, that said, I really do always try to find the silver linings and the positives and things. And it was a really lovely and welcomed experience for me in the sense that I had just time to really kind of settle in. I didn't really allow myself to panic or worry about things too much.
Mm,
And so I really just took time to do a lot of the things that I normally don't have time to do, like just
yeah.
going and running 18 miles because you don't have to be anywhere later that day. All those
Yeah.
types of strange things that people do during pandemics. But in that sense, it was the first time in over a decade that we haven't traveled extensively. We
Hmm.
did some domestic jobs and things like that came up, but it was a really nice change of pace in that sense. Barring obviously the financial impact and all the craziness that went on with moving pretty much our entire calendar year and trying to sort that out with brides and grooms, which we're still doing. But I
Yeah.
think, what do they say? The one thing that is the constant is change. And so, I try to just roll with those tides as much as I can. And I think that at least takes some of the tension and the brute of it out of it.
Hmm. Did it give you time to maybe reflect either on your work creatively or just like a
Mhm.
new business direction you want to go? Because I know for a lot of people, it gave them a pause that they would have just kept going and running that hamster wheel to a sense. So
Yeah.
did it break anything loose for you?
Yeah. I think I'm so grateful for any kind of, pattern interrupt, to
Mm-hmm.
really be able to kind of evaluate what you're doing and why. So it definitely did. It affirmed a lot of things that I really did love, which, I do really enjoy the traveling. And on the flip side, I really do enjoy the pauses and the days where I can just go and be in nature and be outside and not be, attached to a screen. And so I think, luckily, we had already in 2019 had started working on some education that we were doing, and so I had plenty to keep me busy, and we just dove into that. We had our first, group of students and members that went through this program right in January of 2020. And so they had just finished the program literally the week that the lockdown started. So we just really dove into supporting that community. And I think, you know, doing the very best you can with what you already have in motion. So luckily we had already had some of that in motion pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what has attracted you to, this kind of fashion editorial aesthetic and being in that world? Like, it seems something that goes back early on for you. So, is there a genesis for you of where that came from?
Yeah, I think I really love the truly creating, and I love when you are able to do that at every level, which obviously with weddings so much of, you know, the set, the costumes, the everything like that is really out of my personal control. So obviously with editorial you have a bigger paintbrush to be able to kind of make those strokes. And so I kind of love the artful play. And it's so funny because in my life, for me personally, I'm very minimal. You know, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
uh, a fashionista by any means. I'm much more on the Steve Jobs side of, you know, that
Yeah.
type of thing. But when it
Right.
comes to editorial and things like that, I'm like, you know, the bigger the gown, the better. You know, all this type of stuff. So there,
Mm-hmm.
I just like the art of creating and the amount of flexibility and challenge that comes with that. Because, you know, with those types of shoots, once again, you can't blame it on, well, I didn't get to pick the location or the clothes. You know, for the most part you do have creative control, and so I think it is a great challenge to really see how far you can push yourself there.
Yeah, that's interesting about your Steve Jobs comment, because a couple of years ago I was reading something about where uh, there's something about, like, I don't know, the amount of choices we make in a day and how
Yes.
taxing it can be. There's something about like simplifying your wardrobe to where
Yes,
you don't have to make that decision every day. That's like really freeing for people. And once you go that
absolutely.
way, it's like I
You'll
can
never go
make
back.
other creative decisions. Yeah, down the
Yeah.
line.
I mean, I've gotten where I have a
Yeah,
uniform for just about everything,
yeah.
and even I've found other ways to simplify that too. You know, in it was January 2020. A lot happened in January 2020. I just started a thing of, you know, every day we're going to sweat or work out every single day, and essentially no days off. And I've kept it going till now, so I don't know how many days that is. But once again, it removed one more decision. Am I working out this morning or am I not?
Hmm.
Like, it's, well, I am. So it's one less decision that you're making. And I remember the days where,
Yeah.
you know, Chad and I would go back and forth, my husband Chad, about, oh, are we going to go to the gym? Are we not going to go to the gym? You know, those types of, it's just like, it's just baked into the morning. So um, I think the more
Hmm.
irrelevant decisions that you can take off your plate, it really does help you be more decisive in other areas.
Tying back into the fashion editorial aesthetics, another layer for you, or at least for me, when I look at your work, is there's also a very romantic, feminine. There's like it's very soft.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess for you, where does that come from personally? That type of softness in your work.
Yeah, and it's, once again, it's kind of funny. I think we should do this whole study of photographers or artists and the work they create versus how they are in life. Because once again, I am
Yeah.
not a very romantic, feminine, overly feminine woman. I can count on, you know, one hand the amount of dresses I have, um, and I think ultimately it comes from this seeking beauty ultimately. And I think that whether it's photographing a horse or a gown or something like that, that really bringing true beauty and light and love would be incorporated into that. Kind of bringing that to the surface is something that I am always seeking, and I think that's just because there's plenty of the opposite in this world, and so, you know, of harshness and contrast and
Mm,
division. So I think anytime that we can bring more of that, just lightness and you know, romance falls into that. Just having people feel love and those types of things. I love looking at those types of images and I love creating them. And so it's really just always trying to find that beauty and create that beauty.
getting started with your career, maybe specifically in weddings or editorial. What are some of the areas you struggled with getting started? Because I think a lot of people look at look at somebody like you have this very successful career, but sometimes sharing the struggles is helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think early on, so when I went to photo school, not
Hmm.
to date myself again, but once again, digital wasn't a thing. It didn't exist. So it was film. There was
Yeah,
no debate, film or digital. It was just film.
yeah.
So I learned, on a Mamiya 645. I shot film. And when I assisted all those years. And then when I went into actually doing my own work and really stepping into being my own photographer, the obvious decision was digital in the sense that I was scraping by in terms of money, so the cheapest medium is the right medium. And what I found was just self critique at a level that I don't think was helpful. It really was kind of torturous in a way that even in the moment of shooting, I would already be going,
Mm.
"Oh gosh, this isn't as good as it should be. It's I'm not finding the right thing," and that's where digital really I found didn't help me grow and develop that eye because it was so critiquing on the back of the screen in the moment. And so really when I did shift back into picking up that film camera, it did allow me to really kind of give myself space to actually create and try to figure it out without
Mm.
over analyzing in the mind. So on the creative side, that was certainly, I think, finding that rhythm of slowing down, taking a deep breath, and not getting too ahead of that creative process. And I think it's always difficult when you have clients. We're not shooting a still life where you can take 5 hours with it. You're shooting two human beings that are staring at you like, well, am I doing it right? Is this what you want me to do? All that type of stuff. So
Yeah,
I, I think that
yeah.
that was definitely something that took me time to really step into that confidence as my own solid shooter and guiding clients. And that took a bit of time. And then certainly the business was
Mm.
a whole nother element that I resisted for a long time. And that's, I think, why I'm so passionate now about helping other creative entrepreneurs, photographer entrepreneurs, really step into that identity of a entrepreneur, of a business person, because I certainly resisted that for years and years.
With your education program you have for photographers, what are some of the things they're coming to you with that they're struggling with? What is kind of the 2020 2021 struggles outside of COVID, obviously, that just everybody had a problem with, but it made
Yeah.
everything difficult.
Well, unlike when I was getting going, where there was no information out about, all the things you need to do, it was just, we were all just winging it back then. Now
Mm.
there's just so much information that I think, especially about marketing, about what you need to do with your Instagram, what you need to have this website and it needs to look just like this. And I think that there is a line of confusion between what is marketing and what is actual business. And so a lot of times I
Mm.
think when people are talking about building a business, they're actually talking about marketing, and absolutely marketing is important. Otherwise we probably wouldn't be having this conversation if I was just, creating art in a basement and not sharing it with anyone. But
Yeah.
the principles of business, of actually having a business on the inside that's working and is being able to pay its taxes on time and hopefully provide you with a salary of some sort, and start thinking about you know are you going to put money away for your retirement, and all those types of things are totally different than am I going to Instagram at 2 p.m. or noon. So I think that's
Right.
sometimes I think
Yeah.
we're focusing so much on the marketing and thinking that means we're focusing on the business.
Going back to your work for a second, one of your strengths I see is just your composition, how you frame things, is so well done. So I don't know. There's a lot of things I would love to unpack here. I guess for one, are there some principles to maybe design or composition that you feel are just universal that makes a successful composition within a photo?
Yeah, I think really thinking about where almost almost like when you're reading a book, and I love books. Where you want that reader, where you want to take that reader. It's the same thing with a photo. Where do you want to take that person? And so a lot of the times, luckily, I'm kind of now doing that more at an intuitive level versus really thinking about it. Once in a while when we are shooting editorial and we're, say, having it, streaming photos into a screen, we are actually looking at it and really analyzing it that way,
Yeah.
which is not necessarily my favorite, but can actually be beneficial. But I think really thinking about where you want to take that person. And so, are you really looking to guide them like through this side of the image up to this way or through this way? And I think often I will see things just kind of out of the corner of the viewfinder where I'm going, oh gosh, that one thing is like grabbing my eye. So I need to just shift and, get that out of there. Like the more we can eliminate to really guide them in the direction we want to go, I think can be really a helpful thing in terms of composition. And it kind of comes back to that wardrobe thing, always trying
Hmm.
to simplify in that sense. And I think there is some element of minimalism that I am always trying to seek out when it comes to composition.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely see that as well. One curious question: are you more of a manual focuser or auto?
I love manual focus.
Okay.
I think that's why, do love that context so much. But we just actually switched over to some Sony systems, and I was finding, I don't even know what it's called, but they have this manual thing where when you manual focus, it'll like light up in the screen. It's like a very,
Hmm.
high tech. And I was like, this is pretty cool. So,
Yeah.
I've been experimenting with doing, normally with digital, I would just autofocus, but I've been kind of playing with those new features a little bit. There's like 4,000 of them that I have to relearn with these new systems, but been
Yeah.
experimenting with them as well.
Right. Yeah, I do. I'm Fuji, so
Yeah.
XT, and they have the same like highlight peaking
Yes.
system.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah, that's no, it's yeah, I love it too because I'm from a film background, so and I find sometimes with composition, I think sometimes autofocus can be like a detriment in ways because you
I
tend to
agree.
want to like center point everything just a
Yep.
little too often, and then manually focusing allows you to really reframe things as you're shooting without like focusing and then recomposing.
Yeah. And
So
I think whenever you have the option, obviously when they are recessing and things are going a million miles an hour, I'm going to let the technology go for it. But
yeah,
when I have the option and we're really trying to compose, because I have noticed that that's one of the things that I don't love about digital is sometimes I'll be like, gosh, I just, I wanted my framing to just be a little bit different. Why did I do that? And, it is like moving around that it's letting the tech kind of lead a little too much,
hmm,
where I think anytime that we can regain that control and even doing things like I'll set the cropping on all digital to that 3:4. So because I also, I just don't love that really like 35 millimeter cropping. I think works great horizontal, like we are right now, but vertical, I just don't love it. So I'll always set it to
yeah,
that 3:4. And, um,
yeah,
it is really great because then you have a little bit of play that I'm always like tweaking that afterwards. When it comes
hmm,
to digital, film, that's the beauty. You're really going to push yourself to get that framing just right in camera.
hmm. Yeah. You do a great job of coming back to your comment about simplifying things. When I was really looking through your work, kind of prepping for this, I noticed a lot of photographers, something they do, they're trying to simplify the background, so they tend to go like really shallow depth of field, I think,
Mm,
in a lot of ways. And um, I didn't see that as much in your work. And so I feel like you simplify the background by the content you actually allow in the
hmm
background, if that makes sense.
hmm
Um, and I don't see enough photographers doing that. I feel like they're again using the tech to like just blur it out versus
mm,
finding the angle to where it's, it adds, I can still tell what's in the background, and it adds a little bit of a layer to the story in a way. It adds some context. You're not totally just deleting essentially where they're at.
hmm
it's just it's a subtle nod. You're including it, but it's not just F2 or whatever
Right.
the entire time.
Right. Yeah.
So
And I think I certainly probably went through that phase myself, that like the background just is hideous, so we're just gonna pretend it's not there, like
yeah.
whatever that is. And and I think ultimately, like you said, as we progress, we realize, a lot of that is an important component of the story, and it's really just finding that way in which you can incorporate that, or that the light at, sometimes just, gosh, pivoting by 90 degrees or something, you're like, oh my gosh, it's a whole new world. So
Mhm.
I think early on, when we go back to kind of early on in that confidence, it took time to develop the confidence to be like, okay, we're going to move this, okay, we're going to just take 3 steps, where before I wouldn't want to bother people, or, I really didn't have the nuances of how to do that in a really guided, confident way, where
Mhm.
now I think, I'm not going to spend 30 seconds longer in something that's clearly could be better than I need to. And so
Mhm.
just trying to move on quicker is really important.
Yeah. Um, I'm assuming you talk about this in your education, but you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
Um, but some of the keys into serving luxury clients, because I feel like a lot of photographers I know kind of want to elevate and get into that market. Um, what are maybe 2 or 3 keys you feel like to serve luxury clients successfully?
Well, that pesky business component that,
Yeah.
I really resisted, but it really is such really understanding, being as confident as a business person as you are an artist, I think
Mhm.
is a non-negotiable, because one thing that I don't think I intentionally kind of laid eyes upon. I knew I wanted the prettier backdrops, the more beautiful fashion, the more talented designers to work alongside. But obviously, the clientele themselves are going to be just so much more elevated, in every sense of the word, of wealth, experience, education, expectation, most importantly. And so you really need to rise to meet them. And so it really means focusing on that personal growth on another level, and really being able to step into those more difficult situations or negotiations or all those things, and know exactly what your values are, and what you are, what is negotiable, what is not, and how to kind of hold your own in those situations. So I think most importantly, preparing for that ahead of time, and not waiting for those situations to be like, oh, shoot, I really, need to understand what all these clauses in my contract mean, or
Yeah.
have the confidence to be able to, you know, reiterate for, the fifth time of why I need this 20 minutes on the schedule here to be able to do what I do, or those types of things. So I think really, stepping into that far ahead of the need has is really imperative.
hmm Is there little things with luxury clients? Like, do you find like you need to handwrite notes more often? Like, is there more gifts being given at other time? Like, there's just a little more personalization to a lot of interactions.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is the more I remember at one point I had decided, okay, I've got to up level my whole client experience, which did
Yeah.
include, I need the fancier note cards, and was working on that personalized gift. And
Right.
I had one of these kind of epiphanies, probably while on a run outside. That's where most of them happen. Going, my our clients who we are serving now, Brian Raffinelli, a planner, he said it so well in an interview once that I did with him, that they're perfect people with perfect lives, meaning also that if they need something or want something, they will most often have it or go buy it, and they do not need
Yeah.
more stuff.
Right.
And also, as I alluded to, one of my values, or things that I think, the things that they say, what grinds your gears, waste on any level is
Mm.
really what gets me. And so here I was, crafting a bunch of crap. I don't know if we're allowed to say that here, but
Yeah.
for somebody that doesn't even want it or need it. And I very quickly was like, oh my gosh, I'm going entirely the wrong direction. So I think that that is a very common misstep
Mm.
that people will have when they are tiptoeing into the luxury market. That means I need fancier candles and uh, potpourri to send to them, and resist that and try to find things that are more meaningful to your brand. And maybe it is just spending more time, most often not with the client, with the planner, to really walk through that schedule, or to show up that day early and really capture all the beautiful areas of that destination, so then the client has all that when they receive their final gallery. It's finding other ways
Mm.
to really over deliver. Or even in the wedding that we just did, there were moments where we shot for an hour longer than we should have, and that at the price point that we are, and the collection that we've done, we're happy to over deliver, when we really see the need for it, and making sure that they're not being nickel and dimed when it's not appropriate.
Yeah, that
Mhm.
makes sense. That's something assisting. I felt like going back to the beginning of your career when I was working with photographers, there was always just this kind of they would tell you something like it need they need this thing needs to be set up this way, and it wasn't they never didn't always tell you like how to get there, but you just had to figure out how to make it happen.
Right.
And so there's kind of this like just make it happen attitude,
Yes.
um, that you just have to like believe in and like figure it out. There's not
Yes.
always a roadmap to
Yeah,
everything.
and to
So
that point, I think with assisting, and I don't know the photographers that you worked with, but the photographers that I worked with, same thing. There were often less words, than
yeah,
necessarily I was hoping for,
yep,
and certainly don't be bothering them with your silly questions, or be making a peep when the client is on set, or any of those types of things. I think you learn very quickly discretion and reading the room, and all of that. I use every single bit of it every time I step onto a job now, so it directly transfers over and correlates, because
hmm
yeah, you make that one mistake once where you ask a silly question or interrupt something, and you won't do it again. So I
yeah.
yeah, I think absolutely it's really valuable.
Interested with you and your husband working together. Always interested to learn how you guys balance that and then just having a marriage, a real relationship, and not, uh, it leading to arguments and whatever all this
Yeah,
time.
and trust me, we've
So,
had a few of those too.
yeah, right.
Um, you know, we've been working full time together for over 10 years now,
Mm,
and we're still learning more and more, especially as we kind of take on more things, and are always evolving the business. But I think really early on, we realized a couple things. One, we had to be totally on the same page in terms of schedule, and having a routine when we are home, because obviously when we're traveling, it just all, you're just there, and it's just
yeah,
a blur. But when we are
yeah.
home, really having a routine that we're both on the same page and supportive of, and then ultimately really setting expectations around who's doing what. So for
Mm,
example, Chad will always be the one that's packaging up and shipping in the film and downloading those cards. And I am always the one that's doing the editing and doing the client relations and things like that. So we have very clear lanes where it's not like,
mm,
wait a minute, I thought you were sending in the film, but I thought you were sending in the film, like all those types of
yeah.
things. And so I think it eliminated a lot of that, where we had very defined roles and really can step into those roles when it comes to a shoot day, and then you know switch out of that gear. And so there's kind of not role play, but we are certainly stepping into those
Yeah.
roles when we need to, and I think that's really important to not cross those wires as much as possible.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's for the employees I have, it's the same way as like it really helps to give people, there's set expectations, and this
Hmm.
is kind of the lane and area you're
Hmm.
going to be in. And here's kind of our systems of operation and how we operate. And
Hmm.
something achievable. So yeah, I totally get it. That's interesting.
Hmm.
If you could go back to when you were first starting out now, what advice would you give yourself in terms of just a photography career?
Well, I really, I think I did a lot of things decently well. One was being, kind of always continuously pushing in terms of even just raising those prices or trying to seek a bigger market. However, I really do wish that I had really dove into that business side a lot sooner and not resisted it so much. Often, what do they say? Whatever you resist persists. So, what you're
Mm,
resisting is usually the thing that you need the most. And that was certainly the case for me that, once I found some processes, some systems, and things like that, it allowed me so much more white space and creative freedom that was like the very thing I was trying to protect by not doing those things. So I really wish I would have dove into those sooner. I mean, I think like everyone, do you wish that you were like using that SEP IRA and that Roth IRA when you're 21 instead of 31 or 41?
yeah.
Absolutely. So those are the
Yeah.
things that
Right.
I think I think our industry is very short-sighted,
Mm,
and like you said, there's some photographers that are just gone. Like, okay, if they're gone, where have they gone? And, how is that impacting their financial future in the next 10 years in their retirement? So I know it's very unsexy that we'd much rather talk about our pretty pictures, but I think that's just such an important aspect because we can't create pretty pictures unless we have, a foundation to stand on. So
mm-hmm.
just getting to that a bit sooner and not spending so much energy resisting that would be absolutely what I would have done more of. Um, and I think ultimately just embracing that process more. I think there is this for the overachievers. They can probably relate that there is this feeling of like not just like a little bit further, just gotta be a little bit further.
Yeah.
Just once I'm there, that once I'm there, and always
Yeah.
kind of seeking that next thing,
Mm,
which we all know that if you're looking back or looking forward all the time, you're not enjoying the right now. So just being a little bit more present, taking a few more pauses. Thank you 2020.
yeah.
Great pause. uh,
Yeah.
just to enjoy that journey a bit.
Talk about, because I know like giving back and like with your print shop and your some of the stuff you teach photographers is building a business that gives back. Um, I guess let's talk about your fine art print shop, what that is, and then how you're using it for positive change.
Yeah, so one of them is called Render Loyalty, and that kind of came out of a moment of seeing a news story about the last northern white rhino in the world, the last male northern white rhino in the world. And I've always, since before time, have always been really passionate about animals and conservation, but had always, once again, thought someday I'll quote unquote be successful, and then I will, go and create my animal rescue and save the planet and
Yeah.
do all these things, just,
Right.
but 10, 12, 15 years in, I'm still not there yet, and really contributing to the thing that I'm probably the most passionate about. So render loyalty was just this idea, and then I just ran with it. Ultimately, we ended up partnering with three conservations in Africa, three nonprofits, and one of them is an elephant orphanage. The other two are large scale conservancies that protect threatened species, including the northern white rhino, from air and ground. And ended up traveling to Africa several times, photographing the animals that they protect, and then selling large scale fine art prints and donating back. And so that's kind of how it started. And then once I got a taste of this kind of business for good model and how good it felt to really have a different motivation for profits and a
Mm,
different motivation for revenue, I applied that to the education side of the business. We donate 10% of all sales, and so for the print shops, we donate 20% of all sales. And it's led to, we've donated over six figures just since I started those. And it's in the hardest times, it's been like the most rewarding and the most guiding light. Even during COVID, when cash flow was at its lowest, but this money was already set aside and earmarked, and those nonprofits were suffering even more than the small businesses, I
Mm-hmm.
was, sending like a $13,000 donation and going, I don't know if we'll be able to pay all the business bills, but this is going over here. And that
Yeah.
was felt really, really great.
Yeah. Where did the love of animals come from? Did you grow up like around a bunch of
You
animals
know,
or
I
anything?
I grew up in Mammoth Lakes, California, which is a beautiful high Sierra mountain area. So I grew up around
Mm.
the most pristine nature. But surprisingly, my family was not a bunch of animal lovers. I
Yeah.
I brought that to them, and so the very first pet that they would quote unquote let me have was a rat. And so I fully embraced that is my dog. And she made her
Yeah.
like she would run around like, I taught her tricks. And eventually she got like a tumor and I had to convince my parents to have her operated on, the whole 9 yards.
Mm.
And then eventually we moved around a bit. So we lived in Japan for a few years, and that's where I really got into riding horses. And then when we moved back to the US, I was lucky enough to kind of fall into having a mentor and really a second mother that took me in like the summer I was 14, and I just lived on a ranch. And then I started working on a cattle ranch after that, and just being a wrangler and spending my summers working in the barn and kind of
Yeah.
just being surrounded by nature and animals, which was amazing.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, when you're teaching photographers and they're going, kind of you're going through this model with them of kind of having a business that does also these good things. How do you help them, I guess, identify like maybe a purpose or something
Hmm.
that they want to pour into? Because I'm sure it's going to be probably different than what you're passionate about.
Absolutely.
But
And thank goodness, because if we were all just like, oh, we only care about saving the dogs, or we only care about saving the orphan, the beauty is, if goodness, if everyone that is listening to this, or everyone you knew or I knew, even just said, okay, for I'll donate 1% to this one thing that I'm passionate about, I think we could absolutely transform the world. So
Mhm.
I usually start out by just thinking about, what are the things that you see that, really force you to do a double take, or just, you just can't get out of your mind an hour later after you hear that news story, or, you pass that homeless person on the street, or, you see the stats about the drought in the West Coast, or, whatever that may be, or anything, just that one. Often it's something that you might have cared about as a child that, you've kind of pushed down and said, no, I've got to focus on, paying those bills and being a successful person. And so
Yeah.
often coming back to those things. But ultimately, if you're unsure, there's so many amazing organizations. I use a resource called Charity Navigator, where you can
Mm.
go in and type in nonprofits, and they actually rate them in terms of looking at their books and, making sure they've got different ratings. So you can really, I think there's that level of fear that people go, oh, I don't want to, get involved in something that I don't know if they're legit, or that type of thing. But I started out, just volunteering, walking dogs at the local shelter in high school, and did that even when I was photo assisting, and then taking their
Hmm.
pictures and making them more adoptable. There's so many different things. I've got an amazing client who she helps match children in foster care with families that are looking to adopt. It's called Selfless Love Foundation, and they're just bringing all these families together. And same thing, they always need those children photographed and to be able to tell those stories. And so there's a lot of ways that you can use your talents and skills that don't even come into the monetary end as well.
Mm. Yeah.
I always say, whatever you have an abundance of, if you've got more time, then great, donate your time. If you got more money, then great, donate, whatever that is. Even just on the small scale can really add up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. And I think overall, like it just will help with your mental health.
Yes.
Just getting out of your own heads to where you're just giving to somebody else and understanding their perspective and being empathetic for their experience and just helping them instead of always like, I need more money and I need more to build my empire and
Right.
all of that.
Yeah.
So,
And I think, we all have those moments where we're like, throwing our little pity party that like,
yeah.
my life's so hard and it's this and this. And,
Yeah.
once in a while, then it's a really great grounding perspective shift, because you just real quickly go, oh goodness, how lucky am I? And it's really hard to be sad or angry or, whatever when you are spending a moment in gratitude for what you do have. And so I think that anytime we can come back to that, and that's the beauty of giving. I mean, it's cliche, but it is so true that you get back 10 times in return.
Mm-hmm. Okay, almost done. So we'll link to your fine art print shop and everything. What do you have coming up this year for the education, the abundance plan? Is there anything new, or is there something
Yeah,
else, or
so
just more cycles?
we are opening up our next enrollment end of October. So we have a wait list for people that are interested in that. But we are really diving in. I mean, I don't know, Michael, how many years you've been in this industry, but I have never seen the floodgates kind of open like this. It is
Mm-hmm.
just, it's a really abundant time in our industry. It's also a really important time to stay grounded and intentional in business. So we're really kind of digging deep, digging our heels in there with the members that really want to set themselves up for success long term. So just really spending a lot of time with them in that program, and we do a lot of live teaching and coaching together, kind of over the months once we do that as well.
So is it usually a 3 month thing, or how long is
Yeah,
it?
so
Yeah.
yeah, it's typically about 3 months to go through the program, but everyone once again is at a different pace. It's the beauty of, as much as we want to get away from the screens, there is a lot of flexibility that comes with it, that people can go at their own pace, or revisit the content later. So they have lifetime access, and so our students that joined back in January 2020, they're continuously getting these updates and kind of being guided through that, which is really cool to see that community grow.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
That's awesome. All right, I was going to do a quick lightning round with you.
Oh, I love lightning rounds.
So this is going to be like one word answers or super short.
Preferably with cocktails, but it's okay. It's
Okay.
too
Yeah,
early.
we don't have cocktail. I have a cup of coffee over here. I don't know if
Okay.
you're, but that's all I got. All right. So favorite European city. One.
Oh gosh, I have to pick just one. I'm gonna have to say Paris. I know, so
Okay.
predictable.
Yeah. Favorite animal. These are like hard questions.
These are really hard. I'm just so torn between elephants and horses, but
Yeah.
I'll say horses.
Okay. Where haven't you traveled but you want to go next?
New Zealand for sure.
Oh, you haven't been to. Okay.
I
I
haven't
just
been to
assumed
New
you had been
Zealand.
there. Okay.
I haven't, and I'm just putting out in the
Okay.
universe. Come on, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. Favorite photographer.
Oh, wow. So many names are going by me. I really, gosh, I love somebody. I'm like looking at my vision board right over there. Like there's so
Yeah.
many good ones. I
Yeah.
really, I really do love, um, like an alive photographer. I'll say Alexei Lumirsky. I always, that's a hard last name.
Yeah.
Love his work. And then for the classics, I'll say Patrick, because I worked
Mhm.
alongside of him as well. Still alive.
Yeah. Yeah. He's unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
One camera, one lens, rest of your life.
Uh, Predictable. The
Contacts.
contacts with an 80.
80. Yeah. Yeah.
Have to.
Okay. Okay. All right. Just checking. Cool. Thanks so much. Yeah. Is there anywhere people can find you? What's the easiest way to people to get a
Yeah.
hold of you?
Find me on the grams at KT Mary, and we'll link to everything else. If people are interested in, if you're a photographer interested in education, it's at the Abundance Plan on Instagram, and for our fine art stuff at Render Loyalty on Instagram.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Get some framed prints. They're like unbelievable. So,
Thank you. Yes,
yeah.
and you can do good just by shopping. So see, there we've
Yep.
just simplified it for people.
Exactly. All right. Thank you so
I
much.
thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to chat with you, and looking forward to connecting and seeing where this year takes us.